Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Welcome to our live Winona Q&A with our CEO, Dr. Nancy Belcher, and CMO, Dr. Michael Green. My name is Liv Gruber, and I help out with the design of the Winona website, but I'm going to be your moderator today. So after Dr. Belcher and Dr. Green introduce themselves, we will kick it off with a pre-submitted question, and then you can go ahead and put all of your questions that you have for both of them in the live chat. So Nancy, do you want to go ahead and start?
Sure. Hi, I'm Nancy Belcher, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm seeing a lot of people logging in right now and even see somebody adding a chat. So I am the CEO for Winona, and we, as you know, because you're our patients, provide hormone replacement therapy for women in perimenopause and menopause. And it is our delight to bring that to you via telehealth, which for a lot of us, it's not accessible either because of where we live or because our doctors don't want to prescribe it to us for a variety of reasons. And that cues us up for the first question today, but I wanted to send it over to Dr. Green, who probably deals with this all the time. So Dr. Green.
Hi, my name is Dr. Mike Green. I'm an OBGYN. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for Winona, and a lot of you know me as your doctor because I've been taking care of you on the website and written you prescriptions and hopefully help you through the process. Thrilled to be here. I'm really glad you guys are joining us. I hope that this is a good use of your time. We really want to answer your questions. So we have an interesting question that was put up, and that is, how do you tell your OBGYN and how do they react when you tell them that you're using hormone treatments prescribed by an online doctor? Do they agree to continue or tell you to stop and prescribe their own medications? This is it's a good question, and there's kind of a lot of layers to it, both from the patient's perspective and from the doctor's perspective. So I can't really answer so much from the patient's perspective, except that, I was thinking about it, and it's kind of like changing the person who cut your hair, going to a different barber or hairdresser. I know I kind of feel like I'm cheating on them if I do that. And, there's probably some of that involved as well. From your point of view, it's like you've got this OBGYN that you've been seeing and you trust, and all of a sudden now you're going to this other guy, and now you got to tell your regular OBGYN that you've been sort of cheating on them. And that's uncomfortable. I can tell you from the doctor's point of view, it goes both ways, quite honestly. I have patients that I've been taking care of for 20 years. I've delivered all their children. I've taken care of their GYN problems, and really, in some cases, almost feel like part of the family. As an OBGYN, I think as much as any field of medicine, you really get connected with your patients, and that's one of the really fun things about the field. One of the things that drew me to OBGYN was, delivering babies. I get to partake in one of the most exciting days of a person's life. It's the day you get married and the day your kids are born. You remember sort of every detail, and it's fun to be a big part of that. And so I can see from your regular OBGYN's perspective, there can be some funny feelings there. On the other hand, there are patients that want me to prescribe something that I may not feel comfortable for whatever reason. Maybe I'm worried about liability, or other issues, and they go elsewhere and they get it, and I'm almost relieved, because it's like, well, gosh, I didn't feel comfortable doing this, but I'm glad somebody else did, especially when they come back and tell me that they're doing well. I'm happy for them. And so I think in some cases, that's going to be the experience that people are going to get when they tell their OBGYN. I can tell you other times there's going to be a jealousy issue. And, they may feel, hey, someone else is doing this, or it could be some quack. How do you know this is even a real doctor, or they know what they're talking about? And, those kind of things can creep up as well. If your doctor feels very strongly that what we're prescribing isn't safe for you, my opinion is you should probably listen to your regular doctor, because I try and learn as much about you as I can. But, if they've been taking care of you for 20 years, they're going to know a lot more nuance than I am. And if they really think it's the wrong thing for you, probably should listen to them. And in that case, I apologize if I made a mistake. But I I'm a real doctor. I'm not a quack. And, this stuff is all researched out and really is beneficial, and standard of care should be. And so we're not doing anything outrageous or out there. But if your doctor that you trust tells you that it's not safe for you, the right thing for you, you probably should listen to them. So those are some of my perspectives. Nancy, I don't know what.
Well, so there's a follow-up question from Tracy, and she says it's a similar question. I just enrolled, and I'm wondering if I should have gone through my doctor first. I didn't even know what they offer. I didn't even know what they offer, but she did give me vaginal cream recently. I didn't even know I had options until reading the Winona website. So she's kind of wondering, should I have talked to my regular doctor first?
And that's one of the things that Winona brings, is the convenience of being able to get your medicines without having to make an appointment, without having to go to your doctor's office, without having to wait in the waiting room and then wait on the uncomfortable examining table, for the kind of the second room, and all that goes with that, and then having to take a prescription to the pharmacy and having to wait at the pharmacy. And so we bring a convenience that I think is important and can be very helpful. And so I think that's another way to explain it, because you are going to want to let your doctor know what medications you are, and you can say, this was just so convenient for me. And it's a board certified OBGYN that's prescribing it. It's a good doctor.
Okay, let me throw you I'm gonna throw you a fastball or curveball. Let's throw you a curveball. Sorry, I'm gonna use a baseball analogy here. One of my sons was a pitcher. He'd be mad at me if I got it wrong. So let's say that you go to Winona, and we've had this a few times, and this is why I'm asking it, because I know that Dr. Green's prepared. So you go to your regular doctor. Sorry, you go through Winona, and Dr. Green prescribes you hormone replacement therapy. You like it, you want to continue with it, and your doctor says, "Oh, I don't believe in hormone replacement therapy. It's bad." But that physician, he or she, doesn't say because of your medical condition. He or she says, because of what I learned 25 years ago in medical school or residency, I'm against it. So then how do you as the patient deal with that? Because we do, ladies, have a lot of doctors that are out of date, and they are not aware that there is hormone replacement therapy that's safe, effective. And so how do you deal with that, Mike, if you have a doctor that you've gone to for a long time and they're kind of opposed to HRT?
So yeah, that's a great question, a great example. So that's different than what I was saying before. So if you go to your doctor and they say, well, you shouldn't be on HRT because of this reason, that reason, and that reason, and for these health reasons, it's not safe for you, then listen to them. If they say, oh, I don't believe in that stuff, then ask why. And if they don't have a good, solid reason, then send me a message and say, hey, I talked to my doctor, and this was a conversation I had, and we can talk about it, and I can point you to data and articles that are reviewed, that are Nancy, help me with the word
peer reviewed.
Peer reviewed, and no, I'm looking for everything that we put up. We have references. Reference, that's the word I'm looking for. And so we're not just sort of making stuff up. It's like, this is what the literature says. This is the data. This is the science, and this is why we come to it. I finished residency in 1999. I started medical school when did I start medical school? 92. That's a long time ago. And I've always said that, gosh, if you're practicing medicine the same way you did when you got out of residency and you're my age, you're a bad doctor. I was a great doctor when I got out of residency because that was the standard at the time. But medicine has changed so much in 20 years that if I'm still doing stuff the way we did it in 1999, I'm not giving you the best care. And so one of the challenging things for a doctor is to keep up on all the latest interventions, all the latest stuff, and make sure.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And make sure that you're getting the best care that we have now, not the best care that we had in 1999. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff, and it's hard to keep up in. And so, I think it's your health, and it's very important that you are your strong advocate for yourself and make sure that you understand when someone says no, you understand why. You don't have to feel like you're being a 3-year-old saying why. But you say, can you please explain that? And if the answer is, well, I just don't believe in it, that's not a great reason.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we have to point out too is that sort of the go-to estrogen that doctors were prescribing since 1942 is Premarin, which Dr. Green, I'm going to leave it up to you to describe why that's the name. But Premarin is what a lot of doctors were given to prescribe to their patients before, in the 90s even. And then we have evolved, so we have new HRT available, but maybe docs are still prescribing Premarin. But I want you, Dr. Green, to give a little bit of background on that.
So Premarin is named for pregnant mare urine. It's the first few letters of each of those. And basically the way Premarin is derived is they take horses, they keep them pregnant, they collect their urine, and from that urine they're able to get, because just like pregnant women have really high hormone levels, pregnant horses have really high hormone levels. And I guess it's not, it must not be viable for the manufacturers to have pregnant women with a bag and follow them around, but they can do it with horses. The problem is that the estrogen they get from the horse's urine is not the same estrogen that human women make. It's similar and it works, but it's not identical. And so it doesn't work as well as your innate hormone, and it has more side effects. And so now, thankfully, because of technology, we're able to use what's called bioidentical hormones, which is basically the exact same hormone that a human woman makes. And that has a lot more benefit and a lot less side effects than the old-fashioned Premarin. So technology has advanced, but unfortunately, a lot of people are still stuck with the old stuff that was available back in the 90s. And that's what we're using. And the same thing with the progesterone. Provera is the common progesterone that was used back then. And that was actually even worse. With synthetic progesterone, it had a lot of side effects. It worked, but it didn't work great and had a lot of side effects. And the bioidentical, now we're able to use bioidentical progesterones, which is fairly new. They have a lot less side effects and a lot more benefit. And so that's sort of one of the innovations that has changed drastically since I finished residency. If someone's not keeping up, I'm just used to writing Premarin, so I'll just write everybody for Premarin. I just write Prempro, which is, Premarin and Provera, because that's what they're used to writing, and they never sort of got around to changing their habits. Then you're not getting the best medicine that's available with today's technology, and that's important.
Yeah, it'd be like watching a TV show on a TV where you had to stand up and turn the dial. You remember those?
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of the same time frame there. So Rebecca's asking, do you even have to tell your doctor that you're taking HRT?
You really want to. You want your doctor to know, your doctor is going to do the best job they can given the information they have. And if there's holes in that information, then they're not going to be able to take care of you for other health conditions. And so it's important, just like if I ask you if you are put on a new medication or you get a new medical condition pops up, please let me know so I can evaluate that and make sure that what I'm doing is still safe. It was safe when we started, but things have changed now. Is it still safe? And for your regular doctor, they need to know the medications you're on so that when other things come up, they can make sure that they safely negotiate that with all information. But yeah, you really do need to.
And one thing I would add to that is a lot of people, when they fill out their medical records and they say what they're taking, they think that the doctor's office is just inquiring about prescription medications, and they're not. So if you're taking like an herbal remedy, sorry, did my microphone just cut out? An herbal remedy, which by the way, we don't recommend because there's a lot of weird side effects with those. But they're asking about that because the doctor needs to know that in order to properly prescribe or to help you. The same is true for supplements. If you're taking supplements, you need to put those down so that the doctor can make the best decisions. So like Dr. Green said, yes, please tell your doctor what you're taking. And then Greta says, was going to ask this. I have an appointment coming up. I've been on treatment for 4 months and I'm still cycling. My secondary question is whether I should stop using the cream and when I get my period and stop for 3 or 4 days is there any harm in this? And we do see this on in some literature where people are saying sort of, we're going to cycle you with these hormones. But Dr. Green, I'm going to let you answer that one.
So the TLDR is no, keep taking your medicine and take it every day. The confusion, I think, really it comes twofold. The first is with birth control pills. So birth control pills typically have a 7-day or sometimes 3 or 4 day period where you don't take hormone, and that's during your menses, during your period. And it's actually the not taking hormone that triggers a period. But in any case, so women get used to the fact that, well, hey, when I'm taking hormones, I'm not supposed to take them when I have my period. But you have to understand that birth control pills are really designed for a completely different reason. They're designed to keep you from getting pregnant. And so birth control pills basically are designed to overwhelm your ovaries, shut them down, and take over the hormone milieu of your body. And so there's that placebo time, that period of 4 to 7 days where you have sugar pills or no pills at all on birth control pills to allow you to have a period. With hormone replacement therapy, it's totally different. We're supplementing what your ovaries are still making if they're still making something. And so what's happening as we age is our bodies aren't as efficient at producing the chemicals that we need. And so for women, the ovaries don't make the hormones efficiently like they used to. So the hormone levels drop, and they sort of sometimes spurt and spike and drop like that. So it's not a smooth drop, and that causes some of the problems. But the bottom line is they aren't producing as much hormones as they used to, and that's causing the symptoms that we're trying to treat. Hormone replacement therapy comes along and adds back the hormones that the ovaries aren't making as well. And so instead of trying to overwhelm your ovaries, we're trying to sort of help them out and supplement what they aren't making. Stopping for 3 days or 4 days or 7 days really kind of works against you, because all of a sudden now you're back to where you were before, and you have these sort of starts and stops. And it's exactly the opposite of what we're trying to get. We're trying to get a nice, smooth, consistent hormone level, because that's really important in treating your symptoms. So it's really not the way that you want to use this. Now, the other part of confusion is that in the Women's Health Initiative study, there was this idea that progesterone was causing an increased risk of breast cancer. And so some people thought, well, maybe we should try to minimize the progesterone we're giving and only give it a certain amount of days, 14 days during the cycle or 10 days during the cycle, or maybe we'll just give it for 10 days every 3 months. And that's a legitimate way to do it. It protects the endometrium, but it doesn't give you the benefit of the progesterone, number one. Number two, it tends to trigger periods in women that weren't getting periods, and so people don't like that. I wouldn't. And it's harder to remember. And if you forget it, then there are definitely some health risks of taking the estrogen without the progesterone if you're forgetting it. So number one,
Can I back you up just a little bit?
Yeah.
So why then do they take the progesterone at all? Why do you need to take progesterone?
So estrogen, in a woman that still has her uterus, it hasn't had a hysterectomy, the estrogen stimulates the lining of the uterus. The progesterone tempers that and helps fix that and organize that lining and keep it healthy. And so if you're taking estrogen and you have a uterus, you need to take progesterone with it to keep the uterine lining healthy. If you don't, that estrogen keeps stimulating the lining, and that can lead to a uterine cancer. Interestingly, your risk of uterine cancer with estrogen and progesterone together is actually less than your risk of uterine cancer with no hormones whatsoever. So HRT, when done correctly, decreases the risk of uterine cancer. But if done incorrectly and given only estrogen, actually increases that risk. So for women that still have a uterus, progesterone needs to be taken with the estrogen to keep the whole thing safe.
With the progesterone, yes.
Sorry, with the progesterone.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, because a lot of people are sort of like, well, I just want the estrogen or I just want the progesterone. I've been hearing from a lot of women, I want just progesterone because I hear it's calming, and progesterone is known as sort of the calming hormone, and that's true. You want to take it before you go to sleep because it doesn't bring you down a notch. But what do you think about that, where you just take one or the other and not the combination? I think you did answer it, but I'm just asking again.
Yeah, I mean, most of the symptoms of menopause that we see are estrogen symptoms. You will get some benefit from the progesterone because there are some progesterone symptoms that we do treat, but it's pretty rare to see women that just have progesterone symptoms. So you're sort of cheating yourself by just using progesterone. You're not getting all that benefit, and we're not really going to be able to get hold of a lot of the symptoms with progesterone by itself. So you get some benefit, and for some people that's enough, and that's okay. But in my opinion, if you can feel better, you might as well. And so if you take estrogen with it, most likely it's really going to solve a lot more of the problems and really improve your life.
So Loretta is wondering if hormone replacement helps with unstable cycles. So I'm kind of guessing, and Loretta, tell me if I get this wrong, that your cycles are going from the normal 28 to maybe 21. Maybe 1 month you have a really heavy cycle, another month you have sort of spotting, which I think Dr. Green would identify as perimenopause. So I'm going to interpret this question as meaning, does hormone replacement therapy help you in perimenopause?
So it absolutely helps you in perimenopause. And in fact, I recommend taking hormone replacement therapy earlier rather than later for a couple of important reasons. One is, why be miserable when you don't have to? And we can, make you feel better. And so once you start getting those symptoms, you might as well get rid of them and feel better. Plus, it's easier to get a hold of symptoms when those symptoms are still more mild. When things are totally out of control, it's a lot harder and it takes a lot longer to get things back under control. I mean, think about your kids, right? It's a whole lot easier to have a quiet word when they're still reasonably okay than to wait till they're totally out of control and melting down. Then you got a problem.
I don't know. Have you met my kids? No, but unfortunately, that was my experience where I was in denial about being in perimenopause, which, by the way, perimenopause can last 10 years. So if the average age that a woman goes into menopause is 51, that means that women are entering perimenopause, at 40, 41, maybe even earlier. And you're getting all of these really bad symptoms. I mean, for me, it was hot flashes to the point where I had to have a change of clothes at work. And other symptoms for me included weight gain and honestly, premature aging. I just looked really old all of a sudden, like overnight. It was kind of shocking. People thought I was sick, actually. So I denied it because when you go into perimenopause, it's this thing about, well, I'm getting old and I don't want to be old. So if I am in denial, then I won't get old, right? Well, no, that's not really the way it works. So I had to sort of get kicked in the head to stop denying the fact that I was in perimenopause and do something about it. And I just honestly, I wish I had done it a lot sooner. And one thing that Dr. Green has written articles about is how if we use hormone replacement therapy, we're actually preventing some chronic long-term diseases like heart disease, which is the #1 killer of women in the United States. And so, and by the way, it kills more women than all of the reproductive cancers for women combined. And so we will hear occasionally from women saying, I'm really worried about this reproductive cancer. It's sort of like, I hear you, and that's a valid point. But at the same time, why are we not hearing people say, if you take HRT, you will potentially, and we've proven it scientifically, reduce the risk of the #1 killer of women in the United States? And so I think we have to change the narrative a little bit. But I got a little tangential there. I apologize. Let's see. So hormone replacement, unstable cycles. So Loretta, I hope that answered that for you. Dr. Green probably is on call today. I'm sorry, Dr. Green.
No, this is probably my, I should have turned the phone off. I think my warranty is expiring, actually.
Oh, yay. I get those all the time. Okay. Is it all bioidentical hormones from Wendy? And Wendy, that's my sister's name. And so, Dr. Green, I think Wendy's asking you about Winona's hormones. Are they all bioidentical? Because we can't speak for other people and what they're offering. So,
right, we only offer bioidentical hormones. So anything you get from us, by definition, will be bioidentical, and all our hormones are yam-based rather than soy-based or coming from somewhere else. But not all hormones on the market are bioidentical. So there are other places like we talked about, like Premarin or Prevera, that are using non-bioidentical or synthetic hormones. We don't do that. We really believe that bioidentical hormones work the best and they have the fewest side effects. So why use anything else?
Tracy's asking, is Winona HRT cream different or superior than what's available from a standard doctor's prescription?
So yeah, that's a great question. I can tell you that most doctors' offices, and this isn't true for everybody, don't have access to a compounding pharmacy. And so most doctors in their office can only write you for commercially available prescriptions. Those are not compounded. So the other part of that is not all compound pharmacies are created equal. We're very fortunate to be working with an incredible compounding pharmacy that's been around for over 40 years. It's like whole generations of family doing this stuff. They're really good. These guys are so smart. I love talking to them. It's amazing, their knowledge base, and just off the, and boom, they can tell you that. And so I have total faith in our compounding pharmacists, and I'm told, and this is not something that I've done, that it's a bit of an art. Again, there are good compounding pharmacies and not as good compounding pharmacies. Is it possible that your doctor in your office has a really good compounding pharmacy they work with? Absolutely. And in that case, our prescriptions aren't any better than theirs. The same idea. But I know our compounding pharmacy, so I can tell you that anything that comes from Winona is top quality stuff. And there isn't anyone that's going to be putting out anything higher quality than what we have. And so for the most part, most doctors in their offices are going to be writing for commercially available products that are made in mass bulk and sent to pharmacies. Whereas our creams are really compounded specifically for you. So I give them specifications of what I want for your situation, and they compound that. And so it's not only bioidentical, but it's individualized. You're less likely to get that from your doctor's office.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that what I do see from some patients, because I get to read all the interactions or the comments in the little comment sections, and what Dr. Green does initially is he will prescribe what he thinks the appropriate dose is. He doesn't want to sort of dose you up really, really high right away. And then he will incrementally increase your dose if you're not getting the requested results. And what he can do is he can, like he said, he can specify it to the individual. So, and that's in real time, right? Like you can message Dr. Green. Dr. Green can message the pharmacy. The pharmacy can make the adjustments. I had to wait 6 weeks to get my last appointment with my OBGYN. So I don't feel like you're going to get sort of that white glove treatment either. So not only is it that the compounding we can stand by and say it's exceptional, but also it's white glove treatment. So that's what we aspire to provide and have, I think, done a great job. So, okay. So, this is a great one. And this is one that I've been asked a lot because now I am officially postmenopausal. So by the way, I just want to say you're perimenopausal for about 10 years, 7 to 10 years. And then there's a day and time where you have gone 12 months without a period. And that's called menopause, that one day. And then the next day you're in postmenopause. So once you've gone 1 solid year without a period, you are considered postmenopausal. That doesn't mean that HRT doesn't apply to you. It just means that there's sort of this confusion about stages. And so what Dr. Green and I call it is, we call it the menopause transition. And you'll see that in a lot of our articles where it's a transition period. It takes about 20 years. And then that when you go into postmenopause, that of course, that's the rest of your life. And so now that I'm postmenopausal, I am still taking HRT, and I anticipate that I will take HRT probably at some level for the rest of my life because I had some pretty profound hot flash issues. Now, Dr. Green, I'm gonna throw you a soft pitch. Is that the right term? Big blob or something? What about when you can start taking HRT?
So yeah, you can start taking HRT when you start having symptoms. That can be as early as 35. Most of our patients are, I think I just saw statistics, most of our patients are sort of around the 50 year, but we've got a pretty big range above and below that. So we have quite a few patients in their 40s, some in their 30s, and so, quite a few in their 50s and upper 50s.
What if I was 65? Could I take it then?
So the standard of care is not to start HRT for the first time over age 60. And the reason has to do with cardiovascular risk. And the problem is that HRT really helps decrease the risk of cardiovascular disease. If you're not on HRT, that cardiovascular disease may be starting in the background. And so by the time you get to 60, if you haven't started it, there's some risk factors that may be there. And starting HRT can then be a problem. If you're already on HRT, continuing is fine because we've helped decrease those risks and keep you safe and healthy. And so you can continue on it as long as you need it to fix your symptoms. And that was actually one of the problems with the Women's Health Initiative study they had patients as old as 79 that were starting HRT for the first time. Well, it's not kind of...
The average age is 63.
Right, the average 63. We don't even, no doctor in the United States would even start it at that age. So, and that tells you why they had some problems. But what we found is that if you start before 60, not just us, but the medical community and the scientists have found is that starting before 60 is very safe. Starting after 60, we start seeing risks of cardiovascular disease and increased risk. And so we sort of drew a line in the sand at age 60. The exception to that is estrogen vaginal cream. Estrogen vaginal cream doesn't really get absorbed into the blood system to any great extent. It works really well at taking care of vaginal symptoms. Doesn't work so well for the more systemic systems like hot flushes and night sweats and things. But for vaginal symptoms, it works really well, and that's safe to use. And by the way, because it doesn't get absorbed that way, it's safe to use without progesterone as well. So that's the one use of estrogen that you can use without progesterone. So if you're over 60, that's something that can be started, but otherwise, we don't start it just because of safety issues. But if you're already on it, it's safe to continue as long as you need it to help keep you feeling well.
Yeah, and people are always surprised when they hear me say that. And one of the reasons that I also plan on continuing to take it is because I look at my mother and I look at her health issues, and a lot of them have to do with her urogenital tract. And what happens when your estrogen and your progesterone and testosterone levels drop is that everything that has to do with your bladder, your vagina, it all starts to kind of dry up. The skin thins out. Of course, sex can be painful, but it's a really it's a snowball effect where you might see people get better with regards to their hot flashes. Maybe 57, 58, the hot flashes aren't as bad as they were when you were 50. And that's kind of the evolution of hot flashes. They gradually get better as you get older. But the urogenital issues get worse, and they get progressively worse every single year. And so I remember telling my mom, are you the doctor's giving you these prescriptions for estrogen cream? Are you using them? No, I didn't refill it. And then all she talks about is, the burning and the pain with urination, and she gets these chronic UTIs, and it's all because she has low estrogen. Because as she ages, it just gets worse and worse and worse. So that's another thing that people don't really talk about, because honestly, it's a little embarrassing to talk to your doctor. I mean, I know Mike, so I don't have a problem saying it in front of Mike. But my regular doctor, I don't know. Would I go to my regular doctor and say, I don't know. So that's one thing that when you're 70, you can look forward to those urogenital issues not necessarily getting better because you're aging. They will get worse. Would you say that's true, Mike?
Yeah, I would. Let me say two things. First of all, please tell your doctor everything. Believe me, there is nothing you can tell them that'll shock them. And if it does, it'll kind of make their day. It's like, wow, I haven't heard that before. So don't be embarrassed. I mean, we've heard everything. Trust me. You may think you're like out there. You're not. So tell your doctor everything. Don't be shy or embarrassed about that. The other side, I just want to say this because the question was, can this be continued indefinitely? And the answer is absolutely. So I am often asked, do I have to continue this indefinitely? And the answer is absolutely not. And so, if this is something that you want to try and get off of, or you want to see if you do, hey, do I still need it? You can go off of it for a while, go off it for a month or two, and see how you feel. And if you don't feel any worse, maybe you don't need it anymore. Or maybe we need to switch. Maybe you only now all your sort of systemic symptoms are gone. You just have some vaginal symptoms. Maybe we switch to a vaginal cream. So this can evolve over time. The dosage needs can evolve. So especially younger patients may need a certain dose. As their ovaries start producing less and less, we may need to bump that dose up. But then as they get past a certain point, we may need to be able, maybe we can drop that dose down again. And so this does evolve and change over time. And so that's why we do check-ins and see how things are going as well.
Okay, so Eileen says, last year I went to my MD and OBGYN, and they both dismissed my concerns. I'm glad I was able to find Winona. I started HRT 7 weeks ago. I have a bit more energy and I'm sleeping so much better. I went to my annual physical last Monday, and it felt great to tell my MD that I started HRT. We need to advocate for ourselves, yay, and not rely on our doctors because they're not all educated with the facts regarding aging and hormones. Thank you, Eileen. I could not have said that better. Dr. Green, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll tell a story. I had a patient that came to me. She was upset because her doctor wouldn't prescribe her HRT. So she was a great candidate. I prescribed her HRT. We talked a couple times. She was doing really good. And then at about, 2.5, 3 months, she sent me a message. She seemed very embarrassed. She said, I love what you've done for me. This is great. I told my doctor, and he was surprised, and he's now willing to prescribe it. And because of her insurance, she was able to get it for free that way. And she was sort of embarrassed to tell me that. And I'm like, well, good. I felt good. Number one, things are better for her in lots of ways. And maybe we've educated an OBGYN that, hey, don't dismiss us, And so one doctor at a time, we want to improve the world. So, So I think that was a good thing.
Yeah, that's fabulous. Yeah. Kailani, did I say that right? I hope I got that right. Kailani, that's a beautiful name. I've only been on Winona one cycle. When I used it, my period didn't stop until I stopped using the Winona cream. It prolonged my period. In that case, what do you recommend?
So this isn't designed to stop your period. It may, sort of if we're lucky, and sometimes this happens, it may make the periods lighter and easier, but it may not. And that's not really what this is. That's not one of the sort of stated benefits of this, is that this is going to knock your periods out or necessarily improve your periods. If it does that, that's great. But that's not sort of an endpoint that we're necessarily looking at. And people that are having periods, I sort of expect them to still have periods. And if their periods go away, it may be from our products, or it may just be the natural history of menopause. Eventually your periods go away. So I don't use sort of what's going on with periods as an indicator of whether this is effective or not. The other thing is that if you're having really bad periods, this may not fix that, and you may need something in addition to help with that. So some of the IUDs can help with really bad periods. If your periods are painful, there's an implant called Nexplanon that can be really effective for it. HRT may help some, but honestly, that's not sort of the major thing that this is necessarily going to help with. So again, I wouldn't use that sort of as your thermometer of whether this is working or not.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Okay, so Tracy says, this is so helpful, and I'm waiting for my first order to arrive. Fabulous. Well, we have really fast shipping, so it should get there quickly. I am 6 years into menopause, no period for 6 years. How do I track my symptoms and communicate them to you? How do you know when to adjust the prescription?
So here's the basic recipe. We talk, basically, you let me know what's going on. I've built an algorithm that works actually surprisingly well to recommend medication, and you don't see it, but it recommends a dosage as well. If you know, I look and make sure I don't just rely on the algorithm, but I look and make sure, hey, you really are appropriate, and this is going to work, or I think it is, and you say, yeah, this is something I want, then the prescriptions go out. Sometimes I have questions. You answer something on your health questionnaire, and I'm like, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or sometimes you have questions, and so we chat back and forth, and then eventually we come up with a tailored program for you and put you on that. The medicines go out, usually just takes a couple of days, and then we'll send an email out in about 2 weeks, just really to touch bases, make sure you got your medicine, make sure there aren't questions about how to use it. Honestly, don't expect any benefit at that point. Sometimes there is some, and that's a bonus. But this is really the 2-week check is just to make sure, hey, you understand how to use the medicine got there, things are okay at the beginning. The frustrating thing about these medications is that side effects tend to happen right away and then go away. Benefits tend to take a little while. Okay, so that's the other thing is, hey, are you having side effects? Because if you are, let's figure this out. Is this a side effect that we need to do something about, or is this a side effect that's you just kind of got to put up with and it should go away pretty quickly? The next check from my side will be at 11 weeks. We used to call it a 10-week check, but we decided 11 weeks was better. It's really 3 months. So in about 3 months, that's when I check in with you, and you'll get a little questionnaire to say, hey, how is this working for you? Is this doing what you want it to do? Do you want to continue on this dose? Are there issues that you want to let me know about? If everything's great and it's everything you dreamed of, then I say, great. I give you a year's worth of refills, and then I check in the same way every year. If things aren't great, you'll let me know. I'll get back to you and say, gee, it sounds like we need to increase this or decrease that, or increase this and decrease that, or whatever it is, to try to really hone this in now and get it just right for you. And I make sure that you're okay with that, and then we go forward with that. Now, that's sort of what I do on my end. But on your end, if you have a question or a concern, you're having a side effect, or you're frustrated, send me a message. You don't have to wait till the 2-week or the 10-week follow-up. Send me a message anytime, and we'll talk about it and figure out what's the right thing to do for you. And so that's sort of the recipe and how we work.
Yeah, I think the one thing I don't want to speak for Dr. Green, but I think for both of us is that for most medications, with the exception of a few, it takes a minute for them to really take hold. And one of the things that women are hopeful of with HRT is that it will help them start to lose weight, because there's sort of that steady incremental weight gain as estrogen and progesterone drop. Well, when you first start taking HRT, you might have a little bit of bloating, which is something that Dr. Green tells you up front when he prescribes it. But, you don't think 5 pounds bloating, but it can be. And so women get really frustrated very early before they are giving the meds a fair chance. And so I think we would encourage you to give it, I had to give it 3 months. I felt better right away because I finally actually got control of my hot flashes, as 98% of women will with HRT. But I started to see the leveling out of this steady weight gain that I was suffering from. So I would just encourage everybody to give it a solid 3 months, just give it a chance, which leads us into the next question, which I'm actually going to start to answer first, and then I'm going to let Dr. Green bring in the MD perspective. Okay, so Rebecca asks, can these items help with sex drive? I'm on antidepressants that add to this problem. And so I too take antidepressants, and I have had to take them for a really long time. And I'm proud of that because I've gotten my mental health in order. But antidepressants are notorious for dropping your libido and for increasing your weight. So HRT was sort of my way of saying, okay, I don't want to go off my antidepressants, even though I know it's got these negative side effects that myself and my husband weren't loving. But I needed to stay on them. So what we see with women in perimenopause and menopause is a significant decrease in their libido. And part of that can be because of the depression, but another big part of that can be body shame. Like they're just not feeling like this. I know it was true for me. I felt like, my gosh, I'm not proud of this physique anymore. And then the other thing is you're sleep deprived, you're tired, you get into bed, you want to use the bed to actually go to sleep. And so those were sort of my experiences, but I want to jump over to Dr. Green and let him fill in the blanks.
Yeah, I kind of joke that at my age, there's nothing I enjoy more than sleep after midnight, and I mean nothing. George Burns said that at his age, this was when he was still alive, of course, he said, when a woman says no, I say thank you. Sex drive and age is a problem.
And he was the guy that said, good night, Gracie, right?
That's right.
Good night, Gracie.
Libido is a very complex issue. And there's just so many different things that feed into it. But a lot of those things can be helped with HRT. So, this isn't going to necessarily turn you into like a raving animal, okay? But the idea is to get your hormones back to where they were in your youth, when everything was, your ovaries were doing all the things they were supposed to do. And so the HRT can help a lot with libido. It can increase your sex drive. It can help with your body image. It can help with vaginal lubrication, blood flow to the vaginal structures, including the clitoris. And all those things are important for libido. So particularly, if sex is painful, of course you're not going to want to have sex. And so if the HRT can help with that, that's also going to help your libido. So this, again, libido is almost always multifactorial. But a lot of those factors are influenced and helped by HRT. Certainly not all of them. If you and your partner are, not doing well, that's going to affect your libido. HRT may not fix that. But again, there are a lot of these factors that HRT will help. And so for a lot of women, they're finding that they're getting their sex drive back with HRT. And again, in my experience, this is sort of a later benefit. So we generally, like hot flashes, night sweats, sleep issues, those are usually early wins. Not for everybody, but for a lot of women, they get benefit pretty early on, and that benefit keeps getting better and better. And so that's kind of an early win. Things like libido, weight loss, muscle mass improvement, those are really later things. And then there's a lot of things that are sort of in between. And so it has to do,
sorry.
No, please.
Can you talk a little bit about a product that we have called Blossom, and then another product that we have that's DHEA, and how they might both impact libido?
So Blossom cream is the active, basically we took the active ingredient in Viagra and we put in a cream that gets applied directly to the clitoris and the area around the clitoris. And so we know that Viagra helps increase blood flow to the penis, and that's how it causes an erection. And the Blossom cream does the same thing to the analogous parts to the women. So it increases blood flow to the clitoris and to the surrounding tissues. That helps engorge, and it increases sensitivity, and increases not just orgasmic potential, but better and stronger orgasms as well. So it's a nice addition to the armament. It won't necessarily increase libido, except that in general, if sex is more enjoyable, you'll want to have sex more often. So it does help that aspect of it. DHEA is a medication that gets broken down into estrogen and testosterone within 30 minutes of taking it. So this is very confusing for some people, that for some reason or another get a DHEA blood test and they say, well, my DHEA is normal in my blood system. It's like, well, even though this is the same chemical, it's not how it's used. So this gets turned into estrogen and testosterone really before it does anything else. It's the testosterone we're after. I sort of account for that estrogen when I come up with estrogen dosing, but it's a testosterone that we're really after. And the nice thing about this is that when DHEA is taken in reasonable dosages, meaning 25 to 50 milligrams, it'll get your testosterone to normal levels, but we don't have to really risk getting it up to bodybuilder levels, because there's a lot of side effects when we do that. I mean, maybe you want to have big bodybuilder muscles, that's great. Other ways to do that without the side effects, what we call androgenic side effects. But in the doses we prescribe, it'll get that testosterone back to where it was when you were younger, without overshooting and getting your testosterone side effects. And that's one of the really nice things about it. It does take longer than, say, using testosterone cream, but it's safer, it's gentler, and it works well. And that testosterone is really key in helping with the libido. It also helps with energy and weight loss, and probably most importantly, changing your weight composition. So it'll decrease your BMI, but help
Body
your
mass index.
It'll help you lose weight, but at the same time gain muscle, which is really what you want. So in some cases, I've had a couple of patients that are frustrated. They've been working out, they've been weightlifting, and they haven't lost any weight. I'm like, what does your body look like? It's like, oh yeah, a lot better. It's like, well, that's because muscle weighs a lot more than fat. So you have weight, you've just redistributed it to muscle, which is a lot healthier for you. And for most people, more pleasing to the eye. But more importantly, you get rid of that, particularly that central fat, that visceral fat, because that's really dangerous for causing diabetes and other problems. And the DHEA will help with that.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. Jessica is wondering, if I haven't had a period for 5 months, will this bring it back?
Probably not. So again, this doesn't do a whole lot in changing periods. If your periods are gone, it generally doesn't bring it back. Now, the caveat is, in some women, it's a small percent, but it does not negligible. That first month or so, it might trigger an initial period. It's a sort of burst of hormones might trigger an initial period, which is scary for some people and frustrating, but it should just be sort of a one-shot deal. And if this is causing, if you haven't been having bleeding and then this is starting to cause frequent bleeding, that's something I need to know about, because we need to fix that. On the other hand, it's a little unforgiving. So if you're taking it for a while and then let's say you go away for a long weekend and you forget your medication, being off of it for a couple of days may trigger a period. It's that withdrawal of hormone. And that's the natural signal of your body that triggers that period, which is why it's one of the reasons why people get migraines before their periods, and some of the PMS symptoms are that decrease of hormone just before the period. And it's that decrease of hormone that triggers the period. So if you're taking a given amount of hormone and then all of a sudden you stop for a couple of days because you forget to take it or for whatever reason, that may signal the body, hey, hormones are decreasing, time to have a period. So that can trigger a period. So it's a little unforgiving that way. So you really want to try and be good about remembering it.
So Mike,
but in general, it shouldn't get your periods back.
Would you guess that maybe Eileen is 7 months away from being postmenopausal? Like maybe she's, right there at,
yeah. I mean, so 5 months, yeah, you're into the process, but it's funny. The body will like gasp and have one last period. This idea of like what we label menopause and what we name postmenopause, it's somewhat of an arbitrary label, and we just use this 12 months without a period because we have to do something. We have to define it somehow. But it's really a gradual process. It's not like one day you're fine and the next day, boom, you're in menopause. It doesn't generally work that way.
All right. Well, that is our questions. If anybody else has any follow-up questions or anything they'd like to say to Dr. Green, this is the time to do that. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Green. I think most of the ladies are you able to see where most of the ladies are from? I'm wondering if we have any ladies from our newest state, which is Pennsylvania, which is where I went to school. So shout out to Pennsylvania.
But you have a great doctor there. Dr. Brown's actually a colleague of mine as a site director. She's in sort of low-level management of OBHG. She's a great OBGYN, super, super neat lady, really smart. And so you're in really good hands if you're out in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think we only hire doctors with the last name of a color. Dr. Green and Dr. Yeah, that's a joke. But we are getting a lot of thank yous, Mike, and this is so helpful. Wish I had this information 10 years ago. Tracy, I hear you. That's exactly where I was, and that's why I worked with my friends to create Winona so that women didn't have to suffer like I did and had exposure to doctors like Dr. Green. So we're glad that you're here now. We're glad that we're able to make a difference, and maybe spread the word to your friends and share that Winona is here so that nobody else has to suffer. Our sort of tagline is that we aspire to make the second half of women's life even better than the first. I don't know about you ladies, but I certainly wouldn't want to go back to 23 ever again. But I also don't like suffering from the 130 plus menopause symptoms that we have. Mike and I have accumulated a list and we put it together in an ebook that I think our marketing team can share with you guys if you're interested in that. But yes, over 130 symptoms of menopause that most people don't attribute to menopause and therefore don't seek out help to try and get rid of it. Everything ranging from your hair to your fingernails to your mood. Mood is a huge one. Sleep, the urogenital things that we talked about, weight gain. We talked about skin. What are some of the things I'm forgetting, Mike? Some of the symptoms that people maybe don't attribute to menopause, but that HRT really can help with.
I mean, the brain fog is a big one. I don't think you mentioned that. I think a lot of people do attribute that, but sometimes it sneaks up on you and you don't realize that you're dealing with that. There's some unique ones. There's some tremors that can happen, there's estrogen receptors are all over the body, and so when they're not being stimulated like they're supposed to, it causes a huge range of potential issues.
Yeah, and Eileen says that anxiety is a huge one, and as it was for me. And so I had my first son when I was 27 years old, and I had my last son when I was 42 years old. I have 5, and I was a completely different parent with that first son, not just because he was the first son, but because when I had my 4th and 5th son, I was in menopause when they were going through puberty. And so, well, I have one that's going through puberty right now and I'm postmenopausal, but nonetheless. And so it's a really vicious period of time where you're trying to deal with your hormone variations. They're dealing with their hormone variations. And I have a lot of regret about sort of my bursts of anger and my anxiety issues with my sons that were born later than the ones that were born earlier. That's just my personal thing. So Jessica says brain fog is the worst. Will this help? Hot flashes and brain fog, anxiety are my issues.
So yeah, this should be great for you. Those are things that are usually very, very well and easily helped with HRT.
And Jessica, oh, thank you, Jessica. I have a conspirator here. It's awful. I have 4 kids, all teens. Now I'm always mad and screaming at them. Welcome to my world. My oldest son, honestly, when he sees me interact with my younger son, he has said to me, that was not who you were with me. And then I got on HRT, and of course I'm a lot more balanced, but I'm still kind of a hag at times, but that's just the way it is.
Aren't we all?
All right. Yeah. Speaking of which, I get to go pick him up from basketball right now. Ladies, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Green, thank you, as always, rock
Thank
star.
you, Nancy. Thank you Thank you
Thank you, everyone.
for your leadership and getting this going, and your background has been incredibly helpful.
Thank you. And Liv is the design guru that helps us make everything look so pretty. So thank you, Liv. Great job.
Thank you to you both. And thank you to everyone who came.
All right.
I hope everyone has a good weekend.
See you guys online.
Bye-bye.
Bye.